Hey everyone, this is Julia with episode number 72 of the Mixology Talk podcast. Now, first and foremost, I heard through the grapevine that some folks may have had some issues downloading episode 71 of the podcast. Rumor has it, for some people, it just randomly stopped around 6 minutes. Now, the good news is, it should be fixed now. So if you had that problem, just go ahead and delete that episode in your podcast app, download it again, and it should be fixed. So about a week and a half ago, if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, we hosted the first ever Craft Bartender Summit, which is a fancy name for what was basically a series of webinars that we recorded in advance talking about all kinds of really interesting topics related to craft bartending. And, well, I gotta say, I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, there were 6 topics that were very near and dear to our community, differing from areas of management and learning a little bit behind the scenes on that end, and the really geeky stuff that I love.
Well, let's be honest, the whole thing was really geeky.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing in there for somebody outside the hospitality industry.
No, it's pretty much all focused on industry knowledge, professionals, exchanging really good ideas, and I cannot say how happy I am that you put that all together.
Yeah, I think it went really, really well. We had some, what was really cool for me was we had a live chat during the event itself, and I was chatting with a guy who runs a bar in Lagos, Nigeria.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to see.
How cool is that? And he was really excited about the event, and he was saying they don't get a lot of educational bar events out there in Nigeria, which, holy cow, I would never even thought of that. So it was really exciting for us to be able to make this opportunity available. I will say the poor guy, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning for him. So
that's dedication right there.
I know. I was really kind of impressed and horrified. I was like, because there's going to be replays. So I was like, dude, just go to bed.
Yeah, and he asked a lot of really good questions in the chat room, too, which was why the live component to the whole thing was so important. It's because if you're really interested in it, the people that were the hosts or the people that were exchanging the information, they actually were there answering questions live. So it's being able to ask people that actually do this every single day behind the bar and just kind of tap into their knowledge and being able to
ask clarifying questions about their topic, about what they're talking about in their seminar, that sort of thing. So anyway, today on the podcast, I thought that we would just do a quick recap, talk about the 6 sessions that happened, some of our favorite moments, and then if you are listening and you'd like to actually see the seminars, it is completely free. I will say I think they'll be up for a month or 2 from now, probably not forever and ever. I think some of them will be up till May 17th, some will be up until June 17th, and some might even be up longer than that. So either way, if you're interested, head on over to craftbartendersummit.com, put in your email address, and it will automatically send you the links. Or it'll say, we're sorry, they're no longer available. So that'll be a good way to check.
And definitely worth the time to check them out.
I think so, and it's free, so I think there's really no reason not to. There's definitely some really good stuff in there, but we're going to give you a sneak preview today anyway, so you can get a taste.
Absolutely.
So the very first session of the day was probably the most harrowing. It was terrifying to watch.
It was, there was power tools involved. They're really sharp. They look like giant medieval swords.
They really were more sword than saw-like, I will say.
Yeah, they're probably about 3 feet long.
Yes.
So calling them a knife or anything other than...
No, it was a sword, And this session was called Mastering Ice, Crafting an Ice Program That Works. And it was hosted by a gentleman by the name of Cash Boren. He's actually kind of a friend of ours. He's located in San Jose, California, and he runs a craft bar called Haberdasher, which, by the way, is awesome. It's a haberdasher, I learned recently, is what you call the person who makes hats. And they've done a fantastic job of decorating the place accordingly. That's not anything to do with the topic of the seminar. I just thought I would say that it's a great name for a bar.
Yeah, so if you're down in San Jose area, definitely a great place to grab a drink. It does very, very amazing craft cocktails.
And clear ice.
Yeah. And
very clear ice.
Amazing ice program. So
he gave us a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at his ice program because he's got a sort of a unique scenario. He's got a craft bar, certainly, but he doesn't go through the volume nor have the budget to invest in like a Kleinbell or one of these gigantic sort of expensive machines. So he had to kind of find a different way of doing it.
Right, and I have a feeling this is probably the most of everyone's scenario as far as, getting an ice program up and running. a lot of people will buy ice blocks, big 300-pound blocks from the Kleinbell machine that Julie mentioned earlier. But a lot of the time, you just kind of gotta figure it out and kind of hack the system
or hack the ice block to pieces. Right. Yeah,
and just kind of figure things out on your own, and that's kind of what he did. And he gave some great advice. He gave some great just knowledge that he's had to deal with over the 6 months that he's implemented this program. And just getting those insider tips from somebody that's working on the stuff day in, day out was extremely valuable.
Exactly. And so what he covered in his seminar was really all about his ice program, not just how he set it up, but the specific kinds of ice that he uses. For example, he uses block ice that he cuts using a bandsaw, and he uses cubed ice for just sort of working ice, for stirring and shaking. And then, of course, for things like juleps and cobblers and all that stuff, he actually uses flake ice as well. So he went over a little bit about when he uses each of those different types of ice. But I gotta say, the best part of this seminar was absolutely when he broke out the bandsaw.
Oh, and it's the most terrifying part of it as well. I mean, just watching him work this ice, he's very skilled. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows where the risks lie. But having him, a couple inches at the most away from a blade that's meant to hack bone and meat away was pretty terrifying to watch.
Yeah, this isn't a woodworking bandsaw, which was kind of my initial assumption, because that's what I'm familiar with. No, it's a bandsaw that's specifically designed for using in like a butcher shop. It's designed for cutting up meat and bone, often frozen. And so let's not think too hard about what would happen if your finger got in the way.
Right, but he explained all the reasonings why that he breaks ice down this way, how much more efficient it is. And he went into really very great detail about how he actually goes about the process, even down to like the dimensions that he cuts everything down to. So,
well, and not only that, but I think that I've definitely heard of a lot of other ice programs that include a chainsaw, cutting up ice with a chainsaw, which is not exactly safe either. I think there is an inherent risk in this sort of process, and goodness knows we put lots of safety disclaimers in the video.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was really interesting the way that he goes about his program. He's found a sweet spot that works for him, and if you're in that kind of place in the market where you don't have the budget for the big expensive machines, but you do want to have that clear, beautiful, block ice, it might be worth watching.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So the second seminar was by a guy you may have heard of. His name is Camper English, and he is the blogger extraordinaire behind Alcademics.com, and he's just sort of an overall booze journalist out in the world, isn't he?
Yeah, no, he's been around for a long time. He writes for just about every major publication that's out there. Really intelligent guy and just a lot of fun.
He cracks me up. He's hilarious. Yeah, so this session was all about liqueurs. I actually really enjoyed this one. If you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know my feelings on cocktails that tend to be a little bit sweeter. So I like liqueurs, I'm not going to lie. But unfortunately, for the same reason, I think liqueurs have gotten a bad rap. People just kind of assume that they're oversweet and they just sort of discount their use in cocktails. But I really do think that there is a great place for liqueurs in cocktails. And this was sort of the topic of the seminar.
Yeah, and he went into some really interesting angles that are very different from just applying it in a liquid form. So he went into what do you do beyond just introducing it into a recipe, and he talked about ways of dehydrating things and turning them into powders and pills. And
I liked the fruit leather myself.
The fruit leather, yeah.
Don't feed that one to your 7-year-old.
And then one of the things that he touched upon was the ability to kind of put it to a really specific state where you can actually use it as paint in a glass, and it'll slowly start to become liquid again and release a flavor into the drink.
Dissipate into your drink.
Time.
Yeah, so there's some pretty cool stuff there. He covered like the whole gamut, not just, the history of liqueurs, but also how they're made, different styles of how they're made, and then, of course, crazy things that you can do with them, like Chris mentioned. Some really wacky stuff. In one case, he put them in like pill capsules.
Yeah.
But he said it didn't work very well because pill capsules don't melt very well in cold drinks. So you're going to have to reserve that one for a hot drink. But
right.
I thought it was really fascinating. It's something anybody could really try, to start playing with stuff and seeing what happens when you dehydrate it, what happens when you're playing with it. So this session was sponsored by Di Serrano, which was, I think, a perfect partner for this sort of topic. It gave Camper lots of raw material for his experimentation. He made Di Serrano powder, he made Di Serrano tablets, I think he made Di Serrano rock candy, all kinds of stuff. We got to taste the Di Serrano fruit leather, which was delicious.
That was really tasty. And he brought in one of of his favorite ingredients. He would not stop talking about it. Do you remember what it was? The Chinese rhubarb?
Oh, I do remember. We got a chance to smell it. It was amazing.
It's mind-blowing how good this stuff smells.
So good. Yeah. It made me want to take a bite. Well, not really. It was a bit intense.
I just kind of wanted to like roll around on top of it like catnip or something.
It's like bartender catnip.
So good.
Oh, that's exactly what it was. Now, this was a great session, and we were very, very grateful for DiSerrano sponsoring it and for Camper working with us on this one. I think it was a lot of fun, and if you're interested in this sort of topic, I would definitely take a few minutes to watch this one for sure.
Absolutely. Now, one of my favorite, they're all my favorites. They're like having kids, right? You say they're all your favorite, but then clearly, I don't know. One stands out.
Do you have a real favorite?
Anyways, this one was really informative. Bartender to Consultant. And it was hosted by Jonathan Pogash and Ian Cox. And there was a lot of takeaways just for myself. And I highly recommend watching this one, too.
Yeah, I think a lot of bartenders nowadays, especially if you're in that sort of generation who came up through the craft bar in the last sort of 5-10 years, you might be getting to a point in your career where you're thinking beyond the bar. And this is a great topic to think about. Both of these guys, Jonathan and Ian, were in that position. And they're both now in consulting roles. What I especially liked about this session is that they're not in conventional. Well, is there a conventional consulting role? I'm not sure there is, but they have very different roles. Jonathan Pogash runs his own cocktail consultancy called The Cocktail Guru, and he does all kinds of things. I can't even list them here. There's so many of them.
Yeah, like
watch
special
the session.
events, bar build-outs, cocktail menus, staff trainings.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
and he does those all through this consulting company that he's built, and he also works with a lot of other bartenders in the New York area, and I think well beyond that as well. On the other hand, Ian Cox works for National Distributing Company as their staff mixologist. And so he is not necessarily traveling all over the world all the time. He is working in a little bit more of a, I wouldn't say 9 to 5, but a little bit more of a day job capacity. And he goes to bars and helps them with staff training and cocktail menu development and all that sort of stuff. It's a very, very different perspective. And what I liked about that is I think it lets you think creatively about the options that are out there to bartenders who have these skill sets.
Yeah, and it was just fascinating to hear the differences between the two, because a lot of people that I've run into behind the bar always look at consulting as kind of that next logical step. You know, you're either going to become a consultant, you're going to be a bar owner yourself. You know, there's always something you're working for. And this just provided a lot of clarity behind it, kind of the nitty-gritty details on some parts.
And some really tactical information, like how much should you charge and what do you actually charge for and what's your day rate and things like that I think was really
and it
useful.
was really fascinating. So definitely one of my favorites.
And this one was actually sponsored by Karoon Gin, which was, I think, a really great sponsor to have on this session because it's a company that Jonathan has worked with quite a bit. So, for example, I know that he's done a lot of work with sibling spirit of Karoon Gin's Van Gogh Vodka to do quite a bit of staff training. I know he's done some cocktail development. I know he does a lot of work with them at public or consumer facing events. And so I think it was a perfect opportunity for Karoon Gin to really shine a light on the way that he's worked with them and how you really can have an opportunity to work with great brands that you believe in when you're in that consulting role. And frankly, you have the opportunity to also not work with brands you don't believe in, which is also equally important.
Absolutely.
I think.
So the next one was one that just speaks to me. I'm a bit of a numbers nerd. I love data.
This was definitely right up your alley.
Oh man, this was absolutely fascinating to me, and that was Rory Crawford, who owns and runs BevSpot, right? Yeah,
he's the CEO and co-founder of BevSpot, which is, I don't know how to describe it well, and they'll probably have comments on my description, but it's a company that sits on top of your POS platform, and it both helps with inventory and it helps give you a lot of metrics about how your business is running and making sure that you've got, frankly, that you're running your business efficiently.
Yeah, it's a great analytical tool. I've used something similar in the past, and just from an operations perspective, I would never own a restaurant or bar without this analytical tool.
Well, we've built the spreadsheets from scratch, and it's just not worth it. It's too much work.
It's so hard. It really is. So being able to have this level of data at a push of a couple of buttons, it absolutely changed your perspective on data.
But we're total nerds, so it's not surprising we would say that.
There's so much you can do with it, and this is the topic that he really kind of drills down into.
And this seminar was sponsored by BevSpot, if you weren't sure yet, but he didn't actually talk that much about his tool, and I really appreciated this. Rory actually spent the time explaining 4 different pieces of data that are just really powerful for an operator to know and understand. And I won't go into too much detail here because I think talking about math on a podcast is probably the best way to make all of you fall asleep at the wheel if you're driving, and that's just a liability.
Right, exactly.
So we won't go into the math.
No.
But he helps explain various topics such as the numbers you need to know to be tracking your inventory well and to make good inventory and buying decisions, the numbers you need to understand to make sure that what you see in your POS is what you see on your shelf, and if those numbers are different, what you need to do about it. A lot of those things that I think a lot of operators don't have an opportunity to really dig into on a day-to-day basis, that's what he's talking about in this session.
Very cool stuff.
Very much so. If you're a numbers person, or if you want to grow up and become a numbers person, this is a really good primer. It's only an hour. I think it's a really good sort of first dip your toe into the numbers side of a restaurant.
Big data.
Yes. Or this might be little data.
Little data.
Little data. Baby steps.
So the next one was hosted by Eric Castro and Anthony Schmidt. And this is all about scaling hospitality at high volume.
Now, I really loved this topic because I think that a lot of folks talk about, when you look at Eric Castro and Anthony Schmidt, these guys are probably the best people in the universe to talk about scaling craft cocktails. Eric Castro is perhaps best known for his time at Polite Provisions, and Anthony Schmidt is, I know he's been a part of that group as well, or a similar craft cocktail bar. But I think what they're talking about is actually something different, and I think something really valuable, which is not just scaling the liquid in the glass, but actually scaling the experience around it. Because you can make a big fat pitcher of Manhattans and pour them in a glass in front of somebody and ask for $14, but that's not the experience that they came for. And that's the topic of this seminar. As everybody who listens to this knows, I'm not an experienced bartender myself, but I learned a lot from this session that I am probably going to incorporate on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, they have a lot of great tactical tips, techniques, things that you can implement your next shift, and it's all about that customer experience. I mean, because we know from being behind the bar, especially craft bars, they can take a little bit more time to make those drinks, to get them perfect.
It's part of the experience.
Right. It's you're not throwing out vodka and cranberries all day long. You're taking your time to make those Manhattans correctly, and egg whites and all these things. And then when you think about how to do that at volume, this is kind of the topic they cover.
And I'm going to be super annoying here, but I'm going to give a teaser.
Ooh, teasers.
Yes, this was one of my favorite suggestions that Eric made. And his suggestion is if it's Saturday night, it's 10 o'clock, you're 4 deep, you're in the weeds, you're just dying, and a guest walks up to you, you should not say, "Hey man, how was your day?" But instead, you say something else that helps you keep your work up and not slow things down. And I'm not gonna tell you the answer.
And still acknowledge the guest.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key. Again, is you're not gonna say like, "What up?" You want it to be you want what you say to the guest to align with the experience that they expect and the experience that your bar wants to bring. And I think that's the key throughout this entire session. I mean, gosh, we could talk for 3 hours about this 1 hour session. There's so much information there. So I would definitely recommend finding the time to watch this one. Last but not least is a session by some local ladies from here in San Francisco, and it's called Beyond Pre-Work, The Art of Bar Production. Now, I think I absolutely love this session. It's hosted by Sarah Shaw and Sev Welker, and these are ladies you may not have heard a lot about. They've spoken at a couple seminars at, I think, Sacramento Cocktail Week and maybe the Golden State, I think.
Golden State, yeah.
But they have a very unique perspective. There is a restaurant group in San Francisco called Future Bars, and they got like 9 bars now, and they're all craft bars. Mm-hmm. And what these ladies do is that they run the kitchen.
Yep. So they make all those products.
They make every syrup, they make every tincture, they make every bitters for these 9 bars. At one point in the seminar, they say how many syrups they make on a weekly basis. I don't remember the exact number, but I want to say it was something like 150 syrups a week.
And yeah, I don't think they used like the number like that we would be used to. They were gallons.
Absolutely. I mean, these are high volume craft bars all across San Francisco, and they don't share menus either. I mean, that's the other thing to note is, as far as I know, each of these bars has a completely unique menu with cocktails that have been designed with the sort of theme of the bar in mind. So they've just got a phenomenal amount of work ahead of them. And so I couldn't think of a better person, or I should say Chris thought of these ladies as somebody to ask to talk about pre-work, making those ingredients. How do you make those ingredients and how do you make them well?
Yeah, I saw Sarah speak on a panel of a couple of different people at Golden State, and just the topic itself was fascinating, and the fact that she runs this giant commercial kitchen for all of these fairly well-known bars in San Francisco.
Very well-known bars, yeah.
It was fascinating, and just being able to ask her questions and talk through a lot of the things that I know that I've done, not to that scale, but some of the struggles that I've dealt with. It was so much fun, and there's both really great people.
Absolutely.
And so much fun.
Well, I think the thing that I love about Sarah and Seb is that they truly have that experience. At one point in the seminar, Sarah says, and I don't remember if actually this was in the seminar or a comment that she made on the day that we were filming it, but something along the lines of, if you sit still long enough, I'm going to put you in a jar and cover you in Everclear. And that is her methodology, and that's what she's done for, I think she said she's worked for them for 5 or 6 years now, and so if it fits in a jar, it's probably in a jar. She's
extracted it
in
somehow.
Their kitchen, and she's figured out how to extract the flavor. And so I would absolutely take a listen to this session. Absolutely anybody, especially for cocktail enthusiasts out there. I think this is a great session to learn about making your own syrups. Things like, should you use a hot process or a cold process? Should you use dried ingredients or fresh ingredients? Things like, when should you worry about things like toxicity?
Yeah,
she covers a lot of ground in this session.
That's the thing that I really enjoyed from her conversation, was just, these are things we don't really think about, but we really need to.
Absolutely.
The idea that we're extracting these flavors sometimes at a really high level of potency. Some of this stuff could be medical grade if you do, start messing with the wrong ingredients. And if we start to serve that to guests and get a couple people sick, it's going to change the way we really operate.
Exactly. I mean, I think there's definitely been cases over the last 10 years where various alcohol boards have cracked down on bars' abilities to make their own ingredients.
It's happened in San Francisco.
And all we need is a couple cases where people get sick, and we're all gonna lose our ability to do creative things behind the bar. So it's so important to be careful. And I think this seminar is a great, I think, stepping stone to really understanding where the risk lies.
Yep.
And where to get started in understanding the, how much extraction you can do, what's safe, what's not safe, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's pretty much all of the seminars that we held. And man, I am so excited. They were great. Yeah, if I would have saw this panel and topics at Tails, I would have wanted to go to all of them.
Exactly.
Every single one of them.
And now you can, because they're all up on the web. They're all on replays. Like I said, if you want to watch the replays, they're all available. Just go ahead over to craftbartendersummit.com. And hopefully if you catch this in the next month or two, which would be before June 2016, you should be able to sign up and watch those replays. And I think it's absolutely worth it. Totally free. Grab a cocktail, throw some pajamas on. I think it's the best way to learn.
Yeah, and the most beautiful thing about this, in my opinion, is that you can sit down and watch this anywhere in the world. You don't have to get on a plane, spend $1,000 on a ticket for a session like this, where it's all out there, it's free, and we're just trying to help spread the love.
Exactly. And so hopefully some folks out there will get a chance to watch these seminars when you wouldn't otherwise get a chance to go to some cocktail weeks like Tales of the Cocktail or Portland or various things like that. Mm-hmm. So, well, I hope you'll consider signing up and watching some of these replays, or if you're already on the list, I hope you'll definitely take the time to watch a couple of them as well. We had a lot of fun putting this together. We really enjoyed all of the comments and the support that we received from the community, and we also enjoyed wandering around filming some of our friends talking about interesting, nerdy topics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if this is something you enjoyed, definitely let me know. We're still figuring out whether it'll be happening again. We're not really sure about that at this point, but we'll
big question mark.
Yeah, if you sign up, we'll definitely be letting you know. So thanks so much for joining us once again. If you want to see the show notes from this episode, which will basically just be links over to the summit, head on over to mixologytalk.com / what is this? Episode 72, I think. So mixologytalk.com / 72. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great shift. Cheers. Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.